Today is June 3rd. We're recording this a little before you'll see it, and it has been in Raleigh and throughout about 141 different cities in the United States, protests that have arisen out of the George Floyd death that was recorded on film with the police officer placing his knee on the man's throat until he died. This has been a horrible event in and of itself, but coupled with several centuries of discrimination and violence, it has added up to a trigger point for a reaction which seems to be sweeping the country. And it has been so strong and yet in many ways so measured. I know there's been a bit of looting and some fires and stuff like that, but on the whole, I've got to say that I feel like the frustration has been so high and has been so well-deserved, really, that I'm happy that the country is still standing as it is. And even though we don't want to see destruction of any type, and we don't want to be distracted by violence from the message that most people are trying to send that says this needs to stop. I got to say that I'm very happy to see that most of the demonstrations have been peaceful, and most of the people have taken a very reasoned approach. I am also very pleased to see that it's not only African Americans that are involved, but also all sorts of people who have come together to make this statement. I do think it's a time for us to change as a country, and for each of us to investigate our own hearts as to how we can change to be more in alignment with our highest principles.
I couldn't agree more, Neusom. I think it's like a wound that we all carry, and stemming from an idea that we just talk a lot about, of separation from one another, separation from the divine, separation from life itself. It's almost like at this time of the coronavirus, in which we are like closing, this is how I feel, that we are closing an era and we're opening a new one, and everything that is ready to be healed is coming to the surface. It's like, I love when Marianne Williamson says about like comparing it to a fever. And actually this week, our marketing team posted a prayer for her that I would like to just share with all of you, and as a way to help us move ourselves from the pain and the disappointment and the powerlessness to a stronger place in consciousness that can see that the darkest always is just before dawn. And I like to think that we as a country and as a world have to once and for all heal this idea that if I look different than you, or if I come from a different world than you, then I don't have as much value, or I'm not as worthy. But anyways, the prayer says, "Dear God, may this moment of deep unrest be a fever that serves in time to heal us. May the best of who we are rise up in glory, and our shadow places dissolve in light. Bless the lovers and heal the haters. Pave a path for our country out of pain and into peace. Give us strength and show us the way to make our country a better place." Amen.
Amen. So Anna and I have been talking a little bit about how we should approach this. And we had both decided that essentially part of this talk would be hopefully be useful in the sense that we might invite you to do something that would make things better. And it seemed like it would come in two ways, and that maybe each of us could find our place in doing these two things. One is to look inside. The first thing is to know yourself. I've seen studies that say that children have a natural prejudice within them. Even as infants, they respond more favorably toward people that look like them than not. I do not think this is a cause for us to say, well, it's natural to be prejudiced. You know, children also have a fear of heights, but we have learned to fly, and we have climbed mountains and built tall buildings, standing on narrow girders. We can overcome what we were born with. And I think this constant need to be alert to the innate prejudices we might have, and then to take a second thought, to take a new thought, and act from a different place. This is the more mature way to be. And it is an effort, and it is incumbent upon the individual to do it for themselves, because you can't essentially tell people how to do this. They must learn to look for their own prejudice. You know, I grew up in North Carolina. I have had to deal with what I was inculcated with as a child my whole life. And yet I try my best to be inviting to African Americans, even Puerto Ricans, and make room for the rest of the world. And not to think that just because I am white, I have certain privileges over the rest of the world. And yet I was born into a world that said that in many and different ways, and with deep propaganda, and with the exclusion of history. In every way it could, it tried to tell me that. And that's what I grew up with. But I don't have to be stuck with that.
And it's almost, I'm reminded of all the talks that you have done on the Hoponopono. I always have a hard time pronouncing it. I hope I did it correctly. But it's like at some level, whatever we're seeing out there, there's some reflection in me. And it's very easy to be judgmental and to say, look what the policeman did, look what we, such and such did. But what prejudice am I still holding that I have maybe not wanted to look at, but at this time is like, am I accepting all the time? Am I non-judgmental all the time? And so this is a time of collective healing. And before pointing fingers out there, it's like, let's start here. And it's what Ram Dass says, it's about inner social action first.
Yes.
So
I think that's really true. So, in the Hoponopono practice, as you were saying, if it's in your world, it's in you. Mm-hmm. And that is a level of humility that very few of us have owned.
Yes, and can help but think of Dr. Len, the psychologist who in this Hawaiian prison ward, by just doing the Hoponopono every day without never looking or interviewing or treating these patients, managed to get the ward closed by healing himself.
Yeah. So if you are pure of heart, your world becomes pure of heart, is essentially what the lesson of that was. And so these were the criminal element that were in a mental hospital that he actually cured through this practice of ownership, of he had in himself what he was seeing in them.
And by just being constant and faithful to the process of Hoponopono, and just believing what he was doing and releasing and letting go, there was an impact out there. But then Newsom, many of us feel that even though this might be true, it could be a really comfortable position in saying, well, I'm going to do my inner work and you guys deal with it out there.
Yeah.
And
Well, that was point number 2 of our
okay.
2-point
So go
thing.
for it.
And, but
yes.
you,
No, but go
carry
for
the
it.
freight on this one.
Right. Okay. So fine. The other aspect of what Neusom and I wanted to talk about is like, okay, we do our inner work. We try to be as humble and authentic as to say this, there's some of that in me. And then say, okay, what is then mine to do? What is it that in my immediate world I can impact? And it might be a question that initially we go, oh, I don't know, right?
Right.
Because we're not even in touch with a lot of these problematics that are out there. But our sensitivity, our compassion opens so big, and we are in the space of loving and serving that we ask the divine for guidance. We go and we say, show me. And what's coming to me, and I was chatting with you about, prior to coming into the camera, was that I have realized that a lot of the social ills of our world stem from the consciousness of poverty. It's the poverty, the idea of limitation, of lack. And because I'm such a passionate spiritual, let's say, teacher or minister that love the idea of prosperity and abundance, with this extra time and really moved to creating a specific course. Now initially will be for the Latino community, in which they can get all the tools, all the ideas, all the frameworks that can help them shift and open up to another state of consciousness that can allow for wealth, good relationships, love, peace of mind to come forth. Because many of us have managed to see the power of these principles. So I'm like, okay, I feel that that's mine to do. But then I ask you, and we were talking, what else can our church do, right?
Yeah, and I think we're waiting to know exactly what it is, what we as a particular congregation are called to do. But having some way of affecting the world outside, in Hoponopono, it's like the world doesn't exist, only your consciousness exists.
Yes.
And in this level of action, it's like the world does exist, and what you do matters.
Right.
And so it's a both and situation.
It's the balance.
Yeah, I think we've been doing a lot of talking over the last few weeks about opening the heart and all of that. And I was thinking about the officer that put his knee on George Floyd's neck. Now, it was 8 minutes. I remember as a kid, I was playing football at my high school, and all week long we had a guy, number 12. We were supposed to go hit in practice. If we were playing offense, if we missed our block, we'd just go hit this guy, bump into him. And we were supposed to rattle him by doing that because he was their best player. At one moment in the game, we're down near the goal line, and I'm the center because I was so big. But I'm in the center. I'm hiking the ball. As I get ready to hike the ball, I see he's right in front of me, and I don't know if he tripped or whatever. But anyway, he fell backwards, and I fell on top of him. And without thinking, I took my elbow and I thought I clipped him under the chin strap. Well, we watched film of the game the next week, and I didn't clip him under the chin strap. I took my hand up in the air and I smashed it under the chin strap. Instinctually, took only a second to do that. I was like, boom, boom. I'd been geared up the whole game to hit this guy. And there he was, and I hit him. Well, I think that's what we have to prepare ourselves for, is to change what we have been preparing our minds for, so that when we are in a certain situation, our instincts are better than that, and not like that. And I was telling Anna during our pregame that I actually got the sportsmanship award that year from my high school. So I think that's rather odd. But this guy, one day, I think, will wake up and realize he killed somebody because he was not in his heart. He was in his head that had been trained to see other and see them as dangerous. And we need to train our minds to do the right thing so that before we're in dangerous situations, we know how to respond. And that's this inner work of owning our own bad programming. Whatever we have, it's just because it's ours doesn't mean it's good. Our bad programming, cleaning that up so that when we are confronted by situations, we know how to stay in the heart, stay connected, that you're a real human being and not just some image I have of the other.
Right.
And to respond as though we're the same, as though we are one. That's the practice, to go to that level.
And it's an every day, every moment practice.
It is.
Starting with the idea of I am willing to be more heart-centered. I'm willing to look within. I am willing to raise myself up by the ideas that I'm learning and the concepts that are liberating. And I just have to congratulate you, because I think it's so well said, and I feel that it's like a core message we can send out to the world. Really, that it starts within, in our everyday, so that when we are placed in situations like that, we respond from the heart.
Yeah. And I think there's been a lot of conversation about the cops have been trained in military styles now, and so they act like a military rather than like guardians of our safety and security. And so to some degree, we are reaping what we have sowed as a society by letting that be that way. And I think, there have been quite a few attacks on during this time period on journalists by police, 100 to count to date. And we have been talking trash about journalists for the last few years. And so it doesn't come as a big surprise that they become part of the other, the problem. Right. And now we'll fix it in this moment by hurting you. This is, we need to practice this practice of being in the heart, of being in touch with our own humanity and therefore the humanity of everybody else. And we also need to be mining our own minds for those toxic deposits of prejudice and hate that we have left in there.
And I feel almost like culminating with this vision of imagining a big heart, as if, a human heart, a giant size, and bringing everybody in, the police officers, the journalists, the victims, the families, the public servers, all of us together as one humanity, and trusting and knowing that in the deepest of ourselves, we are definitely one, and only love is. And that's why I'm a unit minister. That's why we do the work we do, because we really believe in what we're doing, in just bridging earth and heaven together, and people coming together and living and experiencing the beautiful world that God created for all of us from the beginning. What a closing statement, Reverend.
Ta-da! Well done. I think we want to encourage you to see this as a hopeful time, even though it's a time of struggle and of grief and anger and frustration. I think, there's a phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think it's pretty obvious it's time to fix it. So, but that usually comes with an emotional event that happens to us. We make our changes when we are emotionally engaged, and this is our time to make those changes.
May you be faithful to your own heart and to what is yours to do. You'll be led in every way.
May that be so for all of us. So it is. Namaste.
Till next time.